everybody. We're the good doctors of Abbey Research. I'm Dr. Erin.
I'm Dr. Kristen.
You are very welcome to our YouTube channel. We are social scientists with PhDs who love having conversations about both lived and popular culture. We are educators who seek to bring conversations about empathy and inclusivity into the YouTube sphere by talking about a whole host of things, from systemic racism to the tropes in Bridgerton to anything we really feel like talking about, to be honest. We put it up on this here Zoom. So if you want to join in the conversations, we would love for you to do so. Please like and subscribe and comment below to join the chats, because we like to talk to each other, but we also like to talk to other humans.
Especially in these times. Today's video is part of our series called The Good Doctors Diagnose, where we take things that are happening in the culture and comment on them specifically from a how can thinking about this help you perspective. Today is Monday, March the 8th in the year of our Lord 2021. And we would like to talk about the creator of television, Norman Lear.
Wow.
Who was honored not last night, but last Sunday night.
Yes.
At the Golden Globes with the Carol Burnett Award, which is the award that's kind of given by the Hollywood Foreign Press Association for badasses in Hollywood. Like, it's just kind of the general, you've changed things and we love you award.
Yeah, it's different from their Cecil B. DeMille, which is like the kind of end of career. You were fantastic.
But like Ellen won this last year, didn't she? The Carol Burnett? Yeah.
So I think it might be specifically like people who've contributed to comedy in television as opposed to lifetime achievement. But yeah, it was we learned a lot about Norman Lear that we forgot about, that we knew about Norman Lear. But we'll give you some context first before we gush about what a wonderful ally he is.
We talk a lot about allyship these days in the culture. Lots of people call themselves allies. We are of particular ilk that you cannot call yourself that necessarily. You aspire to be one if you are not a member of that community. But allyship, we think, is often something that is bequeathed than taken in a way.
Yeah.
But there's the other side of it, is that you can do a whole lot of work without ally work without ever getting that title.
Mm.
And the most important thing in this progress is to do the work. And if there is anybody in Hollywood that has done the work, it is Norman Lear. He is a couple quick, he's 98 if he's a day.
He looks fantastic.
It's unbelievable. He was born in July of 1922 in New Haven, Connecticut. In the 1950s, he started making television. He started with a variety hour because Lord knows that's all we were doing in the 50s. And then by the time we hit the 70s, he is a juggernaut. He is making some of the most still impactful television. For instance, the very first time that the word abortion was uttered in fictional television, and the first abortion talked about on American television, was on one of Norman Lear's shows, Maude, which starred B. Arthur. I think the thing he's the most famous for, though, is All in the Family and Archie Bunker. And Archie Bunker as a prototype? No, like a stand-in for most of America in a way. And they had horribly uncomfortable conversations on that show. And it was incredible. So other than All in the Family, he also did The Jeffersons, Sanford and Son, Good Times, and One Day at a Time.
Woo.
And while I have not watched the original One Day at a Time, I deeply enjoy the Netflix remake, which he is deeply involved in as well, with Rita Moreno.
That's right, yeah.
And so much of One Day at a Time's whole point is, Roseanne gets a lot of credit for being like a working class family. I think he did it, but he did it better.
Mm-hmm.
And Roseanne gets you get so distracted by the Roseanne of Roseanne that what One Day at a Time does to me is what Roseanne always tried to do, but I think got distracted by the Roseanne.
Yeah. And I think what's so impactful about the television that he produced was, art is its most impactful when it reflects us back to ourselves.
Yeah.
Without being I think sometimes it can be a little too intentional and a little too, we're being diverse or we're having hard conversations.
Or we're standing up at an award show and talking about how we're going to be more diverse next year, and then we don't do anything about it.
Yeah, and as we were on the old WhatsApp watching the Golden Globes talking about it, the thing that we said to each other was, he walked the walk.
He's been doing the work for a long time.
He's been doing the work. He didn't just stand up and say, I'm going to do better, or we need to talk more about this, or we need to do a better job. He just told stories, and he had conversations that he knew were important without the kind of back to school, Saved by the Bell, it's time for the lesson, that happened in the 90s. And really, really pushed some boundaries in the 1970s for, very sadly, conversations that we're still having today. Watching the clips back, I was like, oh Lord, oh, we haven't come that far. But, I would have told you a lot of things about Norman Lear before I watched that broadcast. I wouldn't have called him an ally. I wouldn't have called him a revolutionary in terms of television content, but he has earned both of those titles for the work that he did, and he did it quietly, in a way that he didn't seek the attention for himself. And I think that shows you a lot about what it means to do the work when we say that phrase. And so we can all take lessons from that in whatever field we live in, with trying to build this inclusive culture that we've never quite gotten to. You can do it but you've got to do the work.
And we obviously weren't around in the 70s. Like, let's just call a spade a spade. So it's entirely possible that he was an obnoxious ass for most of that time, and that like everybody knew that this is what he was trying to do, and he tried to take a whole lot of credit and blah, 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 blah. Where we enter the Norman Lear story is kind of becoming aware of comedy in the early aughts, probably like late 90s, early aughts. That's certainly when I started reading a lot more of people who had been influenced by him and how they talked about him. And I do a lot of thinking about legacy, not just because of my obsession with Hamilton, but just a lot of thinking about legacy. And I think one of the ways that we can measure truly the work of someone's life is how other people that have been influenced talk about them. Mm-hmm. And Tina Fey in particular is somebody that I just engage with her thoughts a lot. Like, I read everything that I can of her. I've seen almost all of her films. Sisters just was a big woof for me, but I really appreciate her comedy. I just always have. Even when I don't like it, I appreciate where she's coming from. And the way that she's always talked about Norman Lear is just this kind of person who set up American comedy to have the awkward conversations and have them through comedy. Mm-hmm. And he did this before Richard Pryor did it. He did this before some of the other people that didn't get the credit for doing it, because he was never on screen. He just made it all happen. And he gave these incredible performers. I mean, folks, if you haven't seen an episode of All in the Family all the way through, figure out a way to do that and watch Carl Reiner and watch the Bunker family and how they navigate with each other. And then again, Maude, I love Bea Arthur in Golden Girls with my whole heart, but she's something special in Maude. And so how that looked and how that worked, or honestly, just fire on the old Netflix right now and watch one day at a time, and watch the warmth that comes across. I think in the midst of all of the hard conversations and the awkward conversations about racism and class and sexism and assault and everything else that Norman Lear shows had, what they were family shows. Mm-hmm. They were fundamentally about family. And no matter how much the Bunkers fought, and no matter how much Archie pissed everybody off, at the end of the day, he was their dad. And you still kind of, he was still their dad. And Carol Connor was, I mean, a legend among legends for a whole host of reasons. But I think what struck me watching him accept the award, because he accepted it because he's 98, but like 12 at the same time. Amazingly, I don't understand it.
Yeah, I wouldn't have put him like a day over 75.
No, definitely not. But yeah, he's been around for a hot minute. Was just that the again, and he could have been a dick in the 70s. We don't know. But now the spirit of generosity, that has come with this, I think. And also, like, everybody on Twitter that I follow that works in entertainment was like, no, guys, you don't understand. Norman Lear's the real deal. So it feels like this is somebody we can look to for a guidebook of, now that we're having all of these conversations again, how do we have them through art, and how can we build on his legacy? And we wanted to share that with you guys as a thought for looking for the silent giants that have done the work that we don't talk about enough.
So we add our names to the long list of people who paid tribute to Norman Lear over the last week and throughout his career. And that is our Good Doctors Diagnose for today. We hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday.
Bye.